Books for Congress Magazine podcast, where we talk all things books and Congress. This week, we're excited to share with our most recent read, which was the book All the President's Men by Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward. Now, this book retells the story of Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward's investigation into the Watergate scandal during the Nixon administration. And we've gotten to a point where it's distant enough in history where a lot of people aren't going to personally remember these events. It's quite likely that a school or history program is not going to spend a lot of time on this. So most people don't have much context when it comes to understanding the circumstances around former President Nixon's resignation. And in that respect, we thought this book was an excellent read in terms of broadening our perspective on what that whole controversy was about. And the book really reads almost like a spy novel or something you would see in a movie, just in terms of the intrigue, the kind of realistic portrayal of how dirty presidential politics can get, how the intersection between some of the government agencies. It was really an eye-opening read for people who are not as familiar with how politics in our government really operates. So in that respect, we highly recommend this book. It was a good book, but it's really for mature audiences. The language was kind of strong, and so were some of the issues that were discussed. But to the extent that you're a millennial or an older person in Generation Z, and you don't really have much personal context about what President Nixon's resignation was all about, this book will certainly be helpful for you. And it also sheds light on the inner workings of a, high-level investigative journalistic effort, which, just even in terms of hidden sources and things like that, it was really an interesting book. So we highly recommend it. Once again, that's All the President's Men by Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward. Now, in terms of activity before the U.S. Congress, it certainly is abuzz as President-elect Donald Trump, his cabinet nominees have already started meeting with senators to begin to prepare for their nomination hearings, which will likely start in the new year, right after the holidays. But one of the hearings that we watched and on an issue that we'll be following closely was by the Joint Economic Committee, which is a joint Senate and House committee that was created by statute and is charged with reviewing economic conditions and recommending improvements in economic policy. And they held a hearing entitled Building on the Success of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the 2025 Tax Policy Debate, which is going to be front and center, a big issue next year as the administration and the Congress will look to make permanent or extend some of the tax cuts that were passed in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act during President-elect Trump's first administration. Now, in the hearing notice, it states, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act provided a blueprint for proven economic expansion by reducing the corporate rate, supporting small businesses, workers, and households, and incentivizing investment. To sustain and amplify these gains, Congress must continue and expand upon these policies by maintaining competitive corporate and small business tax rates, pursuing fiscal responsibility, and promoting innovation. By doing so, Congress can foster an environment where productivity, technological advancement, and economic resilience drive the next American economic boom, benefiting families, workers, and businesses alike. Through a commitment to pro-growth policies, the U.S. can remain a global economic leader and ensure lasting prosperity for future generations. And as the notice says, some of the tax cuts that were discussed in the hearing were expanding on research and development deductions, lowering the corporate tax rate, state and local tax deductions, and the child tax credit. But one cautionary note was that either way, no matter what deductions or tax cuts or tax increases are passed next year, Congress will eventually have to deal with spending. And my personal takeaways from the hearing was, and this is not financial advice, I'm not a financial advisor, and I'm not a tax expert, but is that anyone who relies on a check from the government should begin to think about, or maybe even prepare for, the possibility that that check may get cut sometime in the future. It is unclear how long into the future these, Congress is going to be, and the government is going to be able to maintain this level of spending. But even with cutting personnel in the government, eventually government benefits are going to have to decrease in order for the country to kind of get its finances right. And so it's just something that everyone should have on their radar and should be preparing for, particularly if you feel that if you are solely reliant on Social Security, or your future plan is to solely rely on Social Security, you might want to consider the fact that the Social Security payments that are being paid now may not be what's paid in the future, or may not stretch as far because of inflation and the rising costs of living. Again, that's not financial advice, but that's just one of my personal takeaways from watching this Joint Economic Committee hearing. That's all we have for you today. We hope you found this informative, and that you have a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday, and we will reconvene with you in the first week of December. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.